Hi, I'm Teresa. I am a former trauma therapist turned content creator. I am a frugal minimalist, divorcee, semi early retired, looking a little bit like co-spire in the current economy, which I'll get to in a little bit. So, some things I've done right is build a business that I ended up selling to my ex my half, when we separated, got divorced. That one was a tough one because, of course, I would have loved to have sold earlier and made more money. But, that's the thing about 50-50 partnership is when you go into business with someone else, you will never have a silent partner. The first book I read in 2008, Your Money or Your Life, which was years before we got started on the business, talked about optimizing your savings so that you could retire early. So the FIRE movement was born in me in around 2007, 2008. I actually went to a seminar at my local credit union giving instruction on the book. So I was reading the book and going to the workshop. And in graduate school, I remember saving $1,000 in 1 month just by following this protocol, which was really just extreme frugality and minimalism. And then, of course, saving like 50% of your income. And I did have a part time job at the time. I worked for my dad, and I was amazed. My partner at the time wasn't really into it. I also had sort of a shopaholic, spendthrift background from my family of origin. And so it just didn't stick. But the idea was there. And I just kept thinking, okay, it's my mindset. And so then I started studying Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. And I started investing a little bit of what I had in, you know, their top five holdings. So I just sort of copied them. I went online and I discovered 13F filings being public, and that I could just every quarter follow what the bigwigs were doing. I knew nothing about numbers and math and all of that stuff, but I just figured, well, that's what they pay all their experts for. And yes, I'm getting it a little later, but I bet I'll do well. And I did really, really well. So I had found a strategy that worked. However, the market's very volatile, as we all know. And so I wanted to be able to hold on to what I had. Fast forward to a few years after that, and I'd stopped investing. I had started being very active on social media. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Here we are. But yeah, I sort of lost sight of some of the original stuff that I had been doing. The second book that I read, though, that made me realize it was sort of okay to build wealth was The Financial Wisdom of Ebenezer Scrooge. And this little book was also a workbook and helped me work on the money scripts I had inherited from my family, implicit and explicit about money. Number one, you don't talk about money. Number two, you certainly don't talk to other people about money. And number three, that rich people are bad people. And I didn't really understand how all of these things created that money burning a hole in my pocket feeling. It's a true core feeling for a former shopping person, shopaholic, shopping addict, impulse spender. I think you understand that sometimes just having money and savings, you think, even if you're frugal, the thought can be like, how can we optimize this? How can we get the most beans for this money? It's a bit of a survival mode mentality. Granted, given the current economy, that may be justified. But I don't know. This one's a tough one for me because there is a line, right? There's a line at which you need to live and enjoy your life. And then there is the time to sort of gamify and crunch the numbers and make sure you really are getting the most out of your dollars. Minimalism came after frugality. I thought it came first when I looked back, but it really came, well, third, because first it was financial literacy. Second was mindset shifts around my downfalls and pitfalls. And then third was, okay, what about the influx of stuff that I am buying? What about growing up in an environment that always felt chaotic? If I can't have a calm nervous system in my own home, I won't be able to manage all of the impulse spending and even have the time to concentrate on maybe, say, a new endeavor like YouTube or something like that. So, minimalism doesn't just apply to stuff. For me, it also applies to media and social media. I have had a lot of issues with the short form content in my life. And I will even say at the beginning of my separation, had a bit of an addiction to TikTok, as I could not read a book to save my life. I have since removed short form content from my phone and from my life. I highly, highly, highly recommend. I am still struggling to let go of Instagram and Facebook on my phone. Facebook for Facebook Marketplace and Instagram for messaging with groups of people I play volleyball and just events and things. That's a tough one for me. But for those of you who are on the retire early plan and are maybe feeling the squeeze right now, I have been looking at the worst case scenarios and been running those numbers because it's starting to look a little more like coast fire these days. And I have been in an irritable mood for a little over a week, and it doesn't have anything to do with my moon cycle. But I want to say that I ran the worst numbers. I just said, okay, worst case scenario, the fourplex doesn't cash flow, YouTube doesn't work out, the 3-year balloon, maybe I go to pay off some of the mortgage, but I still have a majority of it. What does life look like? What that looks like, folks, is a part-time job. And that means I won't be touching my investments. I will have to supplement my income with, well, income. And that means going back to work. So I was going to wait for 3 years, which is when I get the large balloon settlement and where I can pay off the majority of the fourplex. And I'm thinking of moving it up to 1.5 years. But there is so much to learn about film and, spending the time when I have it away from the kids to do this and uploading and editing and paying for the software and, the general upkeep of everything. And I really, really wanted to get into documentary style filmmaking. And it turns out I'm just really terrible at it. And this is the least friction. This is the path of least resistance, is just talking to you guys. And I can do that. That is something I can do today. So I will continue. I will be here. I may put out some fancy artsy fartsy stuff, but it will probably be less frequent because I'm realizing that there's too much resistance, at least within me, to be able to put out cinematic quality content because I don't know how to do it. That's just the gist of it. I'm just learning and I'm new and they're not doing well. So instead, I'm going to focus on bringing you guys the best frugal tips and the best ways to shift mindset and the best recommendations for what's worked for me. And I'm 43, I'm a single mom, I'm making it work. And I know even if I have to go back to work, I'll be okay. Thank you so much for being here. Follow along for more frugal tips and frugal living tips, and I will hope to always help along the way.